Today, I'm with Peter Sotolongo, founder of Sotolongo Law in Miami Beach. He is a member of the Million Dollar Advocates Forum who built a niche maritime practice from 10 worthless files into multi-million dollar wins. We're going to unpack Peter's story, how he trains his team to start fires, not put them out, and how law firm owners can think about growth and marketing the way real operators do. Peter, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and thank you for having me.
Pleasure to have you, Peter. Now, let's go back to your origin story. Let's imagine 9-year-old Peter who is doing the manual labor of picking oranges and cotton that suddenly has the spark and decides that he wants to be a lawyer. Tell us about that time when you had clarity of what you wanted to do in the future and how that shaped the rest of your career.
Well, like you said, 9 years old, came from Cuba in 1980, work in the fields with my mom, picking oranges, traveling America, just doing labor work. And my mom instilled in me the importance of education, of a good education. And one day it just came to me. Then I said, you know what? I think I want to be a lawyer. And I don't know where that came from, but it came and it stuck with me since. And I said to myself, I'm going to turn the work of a shovel into the work of a pen. So I'm going to let the pen do the work for me. And I think a pen is a lot lighter than a shovel. And intellectual work I thought was better than hard labor work. And that's how it started and that's how it all developed. And I just took it and ran with it and I never looked back.
Do you think it was fundamental to your experience as well, going through that manual labor and seeing a harder work, maybe physically, in terms of shaping how hard you need to be working intellectually with a pen, but not taking it easier?
I definitely I think sometimes when you live a life or you have situations in your life that cause you to have to struggle, to have to work hard, to have to commit to things early on in life, it shapes you and it builds your personality and who you are in the future. So later on, when it was time to go to law school and work hard, that didn't bother me. I knew what hard work was, and I often said to myself, this is nothing compared to what I could have been doing in the fields all these years if I didn't get an education, and I'd rather be doing this than be out in the field 6 to 12 hours a day or 14 hours a day, 6 or 7 days a week. Everything in life takes hard work and sacrifice. It all depends how you want to use your energy and what you want to commit to.
I think one of the phrases that sometimes we hear is people complaining about the things they have to do, whether it's in legal profession or in other fields. And it could be important to say that, oh, I don't have to do this. I get to do this work. Do you agree with that sentiment?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think everything in life is a choice, and you have to make choices early on in your life, and you have to make choices throughout your life. And I share a story often of my brother in New York when I used to work for UPS, and I came home one day and I told them, this is hard work. Working at UPS is hard work, a lot of hours, a lot of lifting, a lot of carrying. And he looked at me and said, "Oh, work is hard and you just have to dedicate yourself to it." And he was absolutely right. Once he said that to me, he instilled in me something that I've carried since with me, and it's that all work is hard because really no one really wants to work, but we have to work. So you have to find work that makes you happy and something that satisfies you and that you can feel good and proud about. But otherwise, it's always hard, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're a doctor, no matter what you do in life, it's always going to be hard. You got to get up, you got to go, you got to commit, you got to produce, you got to dedicate yourself. And that's just the way it is, no matter what you're doing.
You have to choose your hard and you have to do it with earnest.
Absolutely.
One of the things when we were talking earlier, you shared a lesson that your work at UPS taught you about not touching the same box twice. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that experience also shaped how you practice law?
Yeah, the practice of law, like many other fields, is very demanding. You have to make sure that you're effective and efficient. And I learned that from working at UPS. And their motto was, we don't touch the same box twice. In other words, they don't want you wasting time and going doing things that you shouldn't be doing more than one time. And that was a model that stuck with me and something that I implemented in my law firm when I started my law firm, and we still practice it today. Handle something at the beginning, handle it once, get it over with, move on to something else. Don't touch the same box twice. Don't be doing the same work twice. Do it the first time, do it efficiently, do it effectively. That's the most important thing in the practice of law and in many other fields. You want to be effective, you want to be efficient so you can be productive.
Peter, do you think it's now harder to do that because of all the distractions and shiny objects and new platforms coming out that promise to make work easier, especially in the legal field, but sometimes can feel just like another tool that you need to use that adds the complexity? How do you typically balance that?
That's a great question, and that's a great point. I think the same philosophy applies. You still have to be efficient and effective with the information that you're seeking, and then what you're going to do with that information once you have it, how you put it to use, so that you can still, you're not touching that, you're not going through it again and doing the same thing once or twice. Do it the first time, get it right, be efficient, be effective, and move on. And sometimes we can get caught up because there's so much information coming at us, and then you can just keep going around in circles and circles. But you have to have a clear picture of what you want, what you need, and where you want to go.
Absolutely. Now, to continue the story of your career, between UPS and you starting your legal career, you also worked as a bailiff. Now, how did that experience shape your understanding of how you wanted to practice law? And maybe what are the things that you thought that you saw being practiced by lawyers at the time that you thought I could do this better?
Well, I see that experience as if you're in medical school and you want to be a surgeon, and you're working with a surgeon and you get to be in the surgery room and you get to see what the surgeon is doing day in and day out. So that's what happened. That's what happens as a bailiff, right? You're working with the judge, you're in court every day, you're interacting with lawyers every day, you're talking to the judge, you see how his mind works. Then you're attending the trials, you're seeing some of the best lawyers at work, and you're constantly gaining experience. And that obviously shaped my future because by the time I finished law school, I knew a lot of things about trial work, whether it was, the opening statements, direct examinations, cross examinations, closing arguments, or just sitting in during the hearings with the judge and the lawyers, seeing how lawyers frame their arguments and the issues and what was effective and what was not effective. In other words, what it really meant to be a good lawyer, to be an effective and an efficient lawyer. And I think that gave me an advantage once I finished law school because I had 4 years of experience of watching hundreds of trials, hundreds of hearings, being able to have conversations with the judge about his opinion about things or why he ruled a certain way on cases. Unfortunately, our law schools and at least here in America, you don't get the practical skills that are necessary to practice law once you finish law school. You go through 3 years after your bachelor's degree, you go through 3 years of law school, you're taught theory, you're taught law, but you're not really taught how to practice law. I mean, some schools have programs where you can do trial advocating skills, and you can do a few mock trials, but it's not like medical school where you finish and then you have to go do a residency and you spend a year or 2 years, in a hospital or with doctors where you really learn how to practice medicine. I think we need a little bit of that, but that I was fortunate enough to be able to have that experience and have that opportunity, and it really shaped my future. When I finished law school, I was ready to practice law. I felt like a lawyer that I could go into a courtroom, I could go into trial, and I could practice law.
When you're thinking about the culture of your team and when you're hiring younger lawyers as well, is this something that you look for in younger lawyers, whether they took the steps necessary to get the same practical exposure, like you said, that wasn't given to them in the traditional law school?
I look for people that are willing to work hard, that are, thinking on their feet, that are not robots, that are willing to have an open mind, that are willing to learn, and are willing to dedicate to the practice of law and what we do. This is not easy. What we do as lawyers in the practice of law is not easy. So if you're not dedicated to it, and if you're not committed, and if you don't want to work hard, then it's really not something that you should be doing. So that's what I look for in people. I look for people that are motivated to do the work that we do.
Do you think there is also a degree of having a good judgment and sometimes trust in your gut? Because maybe you want to share the story of the 10 cases that started your practice and how that came about initially.
Yeah, well, that's extremely important. And judgment is something we use every day, not just in the practice of law, but just in life in general. And referring to what you're referring to, that's how I started my career. I was working with not my career, my practice. I was working with a lawyer that retired and left me 10 cases and told me, those cases have no value, but you can get started with these cases. And it was up to me to get value out of those cases, and I was able to do that. The first case I settled for over $1 million, and every other case out of those 10 cases produced and generated good money for me and for my law firm. But it was through my dedication and commitment and judgment, and being able to make something out of cases that maybe other people would not be able to. And it's the commitment to doing things the right way, to follow through, and to commit to the client, not just to yourself, but to the client, to make sure that you're doing what's in the best interest of the client. And I did that, and it worked out.
How did your opinion of that evolved with your career? Because especially in the model when you might not financially benefit from taking on the case unless it is successful down the line, how do you separate between the cases that are noise and the cases that are that needle in a haystack that's worth fighting for that somebody else might disregard?
Excellent question. And sometimes you don't know. You have to commit to doing the right thing, right? You have to commit to following the steps and doing what you think is right for your client, and following through and not taking shortcuts. I had a case like maybe in the last 2 years, that a friend of mine sent to me, and it was a case that was doomed. It was facing summary judgment. It was about to get dismissed. They have filed the motion for summary judgment already. It was in court, and my friend said, "Hey, look into this case, see what you can do." And I did. I did the same thing that I do with all my cases. I committed to following through with the evidence, with the facts, and I started taking depositions. I started doing my discovery, and what I discovered during the process was that they had misrepresented things to the court that were not true. This was a horrific car accident
Hmm.
where two ladies almost lost their lives on a head-on collision. The defendant died as a result of the accident. He was a security guard. The security company, had taken the position that he was outside his area. He was not supposed to be driving that vehicle. So when I looked at the case, and I said, well, we got two issues here. He's outside his area. How did he get outside his area? How did they allow him to get outside his area? And number two, if he's not allowed to drive the vehicle, how did they allow him to get the keys and drive the vehicle? So that didn't add up in my mind. So I started taking depositions, and I found out through the depositions that he was never told that he could not drive the vehicle. And the reason he was outside of the area was because he had to go and get gasoline, because he was on a 12-hour shift, midnight shift. So he had to fill the car before turning it over to the other shift. I also found out that they filed a motion for summary judgment, even though they fired the supervisor, because she had lied about telling him that he could not drive that vehicle. So we were able to turn the case completely around by doing discovery, by being thorough, by following through like we always do. And the motion for summary judgment was withdrawn, and the case
Mhm.
was settled for significant money.
That's a good example how being diligent pays. Um, sometimes, and I'm sure that happened over your career as well. It's possible to take a bet on the case that might not be successful for whatever reason. What's your stance on taking those risks as well, and not being maybe limited by the fear that not every case has to work out, but you still balance working hard and realizing that sometimes things might not go the way we expect?
Well, it starts with passion. It starts with the passion that you have for people and for justice and for doing the right thing. And that's just the way it is. Nothing in life is guaranteed. But what you can guarantee is your commitment to whatever it is that you're doing. And sometimes things may not work out. But if you're committed to it and if you put your passion and you worked hard at it, at the end of the day, even if you don't recover the kind of money that you thought you deserve or the client deserved, but you committed yourself and you did a good job and you were passionate about it, it still pays off.
When in practice you attack those cases with that passion and being diligent, what are some of the things that happen behind the scenes in the firm that maybe clients don't see, but they absolutely fundamental to getting the best chances for the clients? What are the some behind scenes that clients are not aware but instrumental?
Clients have no idea what goes on behind the scene. Sometimes I'll bring a client to my office, especially clients that we develop close relationships with, and they're happy about the settlement or they're happy about how their case turned out. I actually show them, I go, "Do you have any idea how much time and effort we really spent on your case?" And they say no, because they just they talk to us from time to time and we give them the good news and they're happy with the results, but they have no idea. And I'll sit there and I'll tell them, here's just one little example. Look at all the emails that went into your case. And I'll literally put their name on the subject line and start strolling from the time that we got their case to the time that it's settled. And I tell them, look at all of this over the 2 years or whatever that we had your case. So email after email after email on a daily basis. I tell them, and that's just emails. We're not, that's just without looking at the pleadings, without looking at the letters, without looking at the discovery, without looking at all the other things that we had to do. Just one example. And that's all, something that happens internally within the firm, the crew and the staff just working on a daily basis on all these cases, making sure that they're following through on everything and moving the case forward. They just see the end result of it, but they really have no idea. And sometimes it's good to share that with them.
Absolutely. One of the things you mentioned earlier, that the law school, traditional law school, doesn't prepare the lawyers for the practical and what might happen in real world. Equally, law school doesn't necessarily prepare how to be an owner of a law firm, because that's entirely different skill set as well to just practicing law. You talk a lot about caring and dealing with cases with passion and spending the extra time. How do you also, as an operator of a law firm, hire for that? How do you build culture that keeps the same approach to the cases that you bring in?
Well, like you use the word culture, and I think that's a good word. You have to develop the right culture. You have to hire people that have the same philosophy and mentality as you do. You have to hire people that are willing to work hard and are dedicated and committed to the practice of law. And then you have to hire people that can get along well and that can work closely together. One of the problems that I find in big law firms, and I've experienced it because I started out in a very big law firm. Nowadays they have 400 lawyers, is that there's sometimes a lot of bickering going on within the law firm and a lot of personality issues that get in the way of the work that you should be doing. So I made it a point from the very beginning to make sure that I hired people that I liked and that I got along with, but that they also liked each other and also got along with each other. And one of the things that I do in my own practice is the initial interviews, and I allow my office to do those. I want them to do the initial interview. I want them to feel out the people. I want them to feel comfortable with them before I even interview them. So we'll go through five interviews, and then they'll tell me, well, out of these five, we like these three. We think they'll work out. And then I will go ahead and interview them. But ultimately, the decision, when we make the decision, I rely a lot on them because they're going to be working together, and I want them to feel like a family, like they can work together on a daily basis. I mean, we spend more time in our offices than we do sometimes with our own family. So this is our family away from our real family. And I think it's important that they have a cohesive relationship where they like each other and they want to spend time together. I mean, we work out together. We have lunch on Fridays together. We order lunch on Fridays. We have a relationship where everybody's looking out for each other and working together to create a positive environment for everybody. And I think that's essential in any practice.
I think I absolutely agree with that. And creating an environment when the team really can work together efficiently without any office politics that make their life harder and potentially undermines the results for clients as well is important. Did you always have the policy of letting the team interview from the moment you started, or was there a story of how you arrived to that practice now?
It comes with experience, you know. Initially, obviously, I took the lead on that, but as you grow and as you develop and as you build your management skills, because it's important to read about management skills, how to become a better manager, how to become a better supervisor, how to become a better leader. You learn those things, and then you surround yourself with people that are also leaders and also have good management skills and also have good foresight, and you have to trust them. I mean, these are the people that are running your office. And so it is something that develops over time. It develops through trust. And so that's how it came about.
One of the phrases that you mentioned when we spoke earlier is that something that you say internally that we don't put out fires, we start fires in other firms. Do you want to elaborate what that means for your team?
Yeah, so I hear that all the time, like, oh, we're putting out a fire here, we'll get back to you. We got a fire going on here, we'll get back to you. And I've never believed in that philosophy. And I obviously tell my office, we don't put out fires, we start fires. The reason we don't put out fires is because, just think about your own house, right? If you see something that's not right, and it could create a hazard and it could start a fire, you need to deal with it, you need to address it, and not only address it, but think about, how do I prevent this from happening in the future? I don't like to put out fires because I don't like fires, whether it's in my house or in my office, right? Because if you're prepared to take on challenges and to do things right, you shouldn't be dealing with that. I like to start fires. I think of myself as the work that we do. Let's create fires on their end. Let's shoot over there. Let's create situations on their end where they're putting out the fires because they're not prepared. They're not organized. They don't have the foresight or the organization that we do. So we don't practice that way. It's not a good way to practice putting out fires. Let the firemen and firefighters deal with that in their own world, but that's not the world we should be living in.
Absolutely. I think as business owners, we might be in a privileged position to take some of those risks to be proactive, but sometimes our team members might not necessarily feel that taking a proactive approach could be too risky and they might be worried about it. So from the legal leadership perspective, how do you create environment for your team members to go ahead and start the fires for other firms without them being worried that they might do something wrong that maybe you wouldn't have approved, or maybe they don't have some piece of information that's
I think it starts with training. I think it starts with training. One of the things that I've done over the years, I've made sure that my staff is properly trained. You want to properly train people to give them the confidence to act. When I call someone into my office because I want to point something out, I tell them, I'm not criticizing you. I'm providing information to you. See that? I'm not mad. I'm having a conversation with you. I want you to learn from this experience. And the reason I want you to learn from it is because I want you to be better, right? So it's a combination of training and building confidence in the people that work with you.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things I want to do, Peter, is I want to read the review that a client of yours left on Google. Now, that person, Natasha, says Sotolongo was the only attorney that took my case. Others doubted and didn't want to fight for me, but Sotolongo did, and for him I'm truly grateful. He never backed down and argued and fought tooth and nail for justice. Because of him, justice was served, and I would recommend him to anyone because of the great attorney he is. He doesn't back down, he doesn't accept defeat, and he will fight till the end. Mr. Sotolongo, I'm so glad I found you. Thank you. Now, my question is, as the owner of a law firm, how do you make sure that your marketing helps the next Natasha find you if they are not part of your referral network? If there is another Natasha that feels desperate that she's not being heard, she's not being represented, how are you making sure that they can find you?
Well, one of the ways is through that. We make sure that once we finish a case, we always ask a client to give a review. We don't tell them what to say. We don't tell them what to write. We tell them to just be honest about the experience that they've had. And hopefully, when people visit our website and when they see the kind of work that we do and how we're committed to justice and making a change in people's lives, that they will sign up. We also have a lot of business that we get from our own clients that basically recommend other clients to us. And I mean, for the first 15 years of my life, of my profession, I never advertised. I never had to do anything as far as marketing was concerned because of the type of service we provided allow us to get business from our former clients who just recommended other people to us. Now we're doing a little bit more of marketing because of the world that we're in, and that's just the way it is. But I think it starts with just making sure that you're providing good service, that you're committed to doing the right thing, that you believe in justice, and that you're passionate about the work that you do. That particular review that you read, I remember that particular client, and that was a tough case. She had been turned down by other lawyers. I took a chance on her. I took a chance on the case because I liked the lady. I thought she deserved justice, and I thought it was worth pursuing. And we were able to get the result that probably other firms would not have gotten for her. And again, it was through the commitment, through the due diligence, and through the passion that we felt about the case. And the opposing counsel also feels that and they see it. So they eventually come to the table and hopefully resolve the case. And then everyone is happy.
Absolutely. But everything comes from taking it personally and doing the best job for your clients. And making, like you said, as a marketer, I think the key part of what you said there is you do need to work with the clients after the case is finished and helping others know about it as well. Because from what I've seen, it's really unfortunate that there are a lot of experts that try to be the best hidden secret. And I feel like that does disservice to potential clients that could use their help. And it was interesting that you said your stance on marketing has evolved over the last 15 years. And in the way you approach marketing right now, how do you go about, choosing how to market and which channels to pursue for the firm?
Well, we obviously do a lot of digital marketing. I have someone that just is committed to that. Thankfully, we're ranked pretty high in Google. So when people, search for a medical malpractice attorney, we're ranked high up there, and it's through a combination of his good work, our good work, our reputation, and it's all come together in a way that we're able to pick up business that way and clients. And I always ask my client, "How did you hear about us, or how did you get to me?" And usually the response is, "I looked up medical malpractice attorneys, and you were one of the first ones that came up."
How important was it for you to actually have a niche, especially in such a competitive market as that you operate in? How did you go from not being generalist and actually figuring out that this is exactly what you want to focus on, and then building the presence and the referrals in that specific niche?
Well, initially it started with maritime law, or some people may call it admiralty here in Miami, because we're the capital cruise world of the world. We have the major cruise lines here out of the port of Miami, and it's a very tight niche, very close community of lawyers. And when I first started, I just focused on service. I was competing against a lot of bigger firms with a lot bigger reputation, a lot of more resources. But I could hear the clients suffering. I knew enough about the community that I knew they were not getting the representation and the service that they really deserve. So when I started my law firm in 2008, I said, how do I compete with these people? And one of the ways that I knew I was going to be able to compete was to give, the exceptional service that we provide in our firm, because I could see that that was not being provided. Some firms become like a factory where
Mm.
you're just a number, you're just a file. They want to just get as many cases in as possible and settle them as soon as possible, and obviously make their money and a profit. And you have to do that to a certain extent because we run a business. But my approach is different, and again, it goes back to my UPS days, right, where they instilled the concept of and the philosophy of service. And I said to myself, there is a lot of people out there, a lot of injured crew members that are looking for exceptional service and they're not receiving it. So once the word got out that we were doing that they could reach me, they could talk to me, that I would be there for them, that I would provide the sort of service and listen to them and get them justice, it just took off, on its own at that point.
Absolutely. One of the things that you mentioned is now that you're ranking organically, if somebody looking for you as well, what has your experience looked like with advertising on different channels? Have you tried it before? What did you find worked or didn't work for you, especially because, again, your niche is highly competitive and you're in one of the most competitive markets as well for it?
It's a learning experience. Like everything else, it's a moving target. We have meetings all the time. We analyze data. There's a lot of competition down here where I'm at. There's a lot of competition in the field that I'm in. And so it's a constant struggle, and it's a constant battle. You have to keep your ear to the ground. You have to continue to do exceptional work. You have to continue to provide exceptional service. And it's a growing process. So marketing, digital marketing is the future. It's where everybody is. It's very expensive. You have to be creative. You have to be focused on a particular niche. So it's we're still growing through it, because for many years I really didn't even have to rely on that. But the world is changing, and it's changing really fast, and that through AI now and through digital marketing, and a lot of big firms are pouring millions of dollars into advertisement and into marketing. So you have to stay creative and stay on top of things as much as possible.
Peter, you just said something that I want to double click on, that you spend time looking at data. From our side, we often have conversations with business owners in legal sector as well that don't have the data to look at, and they don't make the informed decisions because they don't know where somebody finds them. And you mentioned that you're asking that question diligently whenever somebody comes to you. They don't have the numbers of who is on their website, what happens on the phone calls. How did you build the infrastructure you have today to be able to see the actual numbers? So then when you are deciding how to spend your time and your money building those digital channels, that you're making informed decisions.
Well, I have someone in my office that literally monitors all of that and tracks all of that and reports all of that to the person that's running our ads and is doing our marketing. So they have weekly meetings on it. And it all started because one day during one of our meetings I said, "Who's tracking the data?" I mean, if we're not tracking the data, then what are we doing? Are we just throwing money up in the air and just shooting blanks and just hoping that something lands without really understanding what's going on and where we're being efficient and effective and where we're not being efficient and effective? And that's the key to it. You have to track the data. We do it through my office, but I'm sure in the future and probably even now that can also be done through some program or AI system that can sort of monitor this and show you what's working, what's not working, where you're getting leads, where you're not getting leads, where you're losing leads, why you're losing the leads. Man, that's a whole field in itself, and it's hard. It's a lot of work, but you got to
Absolutely.
commit to it because it's not going to happen on its own.
I think because of your origin story and your journey, like you said, you understand hard work, that every work is hard, and sometimes you need to go with the gut. And my guess is that it helped you start that digital journey that probably was harder than it looked from the outside. What would be your advice to your colleagues in the industry who have their practices and they start advertisement and maybe they have the wrong idea that they will spend a penny and bring $1 million cases on the day one?
First of all, it's not that easy. It's going to take money, it's going to take commitment. But what I would say is start early, start as fast as possible, use the technology that's out there to your benefit. Make sure you have a good team, make sure you have the right people on your side. And then don't forget that what's also important is that you're doing good work, you're providing good service, because your reputation will follow you. And whether you're spending a lot of money or not, and do you have the best digital person or not, if the word gets out that you don't provide good service and you don't do good by your clients and you're not good at what you do or committed and your office is not responsive and it's not passionate about taking care of the clients, then ultimately that'll catch up to you.
Marketing is an accelerator. If you're doing good work, the word will spread, but equally, if you don't care and you just want to be a factory, that will spread too as well. That's
Absolutely.
that's I think is a good sentiment. From your experience, and you have somebody, like you said, helping you with marketing, and you're looking at the numbers every week, but presumably there was some trial and error to get to that point as well. From the moment you've created your firm to now, what's the most memorable, best and worst experience of partnering with marketers, whether it is somebody in-house or maybe working with somebody externally?
Well, the worst experience is really, not being on top of it earlier, because I realized that I should have been more focused on marketing from the very beginning, from many, many years ago. I got lucky because I had a particular niche and we were providing exceptional service. So the business was coming easy. And if we didn't have to spend money on marketing because we were getting the work, why do that? But it's important to do that. So that was something that I wish if I could go back, I would have started doing earlier.
Mhm.
The benefit of it, and what I would say is that in today's world, it's the future because of technology and because of AI now, and because of the way people are communicating. Remember back in the days, people would look in the yellow pages for lawyers. They would go to magazines and newspapers and go from the advertisement on the highways and things like that. And nowadays everyone is digital. Everyone is looking online and doing it through computers and things like that. So you have to learn. You have to stay on top of it. You have to become sort of a professional in that field nowadays as well.
Absolutely. What is the current frontier for you in terms of your growth of the firm from the marketing perspective, from maybe hiring perspective as well? What is the challenge that you're looking to solve this year that's top of the mind for you?
It's same thing, continuing to grow the client base, continuing to focus on particular demographics and areas and practice areas. For example, my office is in Miami Beach. We're here in Miami. We have a large Spanish community. In the past, I was not as focused on the Spanish community because my clients are international clients from all over the world,
Hmm.
because those are the people that work on the cruise ships and in the cruise line industry. Now that we shifted a little bit more to medical malpractice, car accidents, slip and falls, personal injury stuff, we're trying to focus more on the Spanish population, since I'm Cuban, and I speak Spanish, and everyone in my office speaks Spanish, and they're from Central and South America. And we're trying to also focus more on my particular area, which is Miami Beach, since we're a local firm and we're part of our community. And so we're trying to grow that area as well. Those two.
Peter, where can people find you online if they want to learn more about your work and the work of your firm?
Our website is Sotolongo Law. If you look it up, you'll see all the information there. Anything you need to want to know about us. We have my office number there, and you can always feel free to give me a call. I'm always open to speak to anyone and talk to them. I love sharing experiences. I love giving advice. I love being a part of our legal community. I love giving speeches at schools or universities or whatever. I'm just giving back to the community that we're a part of, so we can all be better at what we do and grow together.
Perfect. Peter, thank you. It's been a great having you on today. I feel like you've shared a lot of nuggets of wisdom and knowledge with our audience and reminded everybody that ultimately it is the great service doing the hard work. Even if the clients don't know about it, it's the things that the culture and behind the scenes that ultimately makes a difference and makes clients that otherwise would have missed out on the proper representation win their cases and sometimes, of course, change the course of their lives. So thank you for being on. And for any firm owners listening to us today, if you also have an exceptional legal service, but your marketing could use a checkup, my team has built a 12-point marketing audit that we are able to send you so you can see if there's anything that requires additional attention. Reach us on LinkedIn and we will send it over to you. Peter, once again, thank you for being with us and have a great day.
Thank you, Alex. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me on. Have a wonderful day.